The Houston Rockets are currently 10-5, third in the West, and are turning heads across the association. With a new revitalized coach under Ime Udoka, a defensive dominance that we've never seen before, and young stars like Alperen Sengun stepping up, this team has been a problem for opponents that they have faced. But can they maintain this success with the lack of an offensive go-to force? Let's break down the Rockets' impressive start, the challenges they face, and their potential to shake up the Western Conference. Alright, now starting off with the positives for the Houston Rockets, let's go ahead and look at their stellar record and net rating to begin. So looking at the big picture right now, the Rockets are 10-5 with the 5th best net rating in the entire NBA at plus 7.9. That's not just a hard start, that is sustained, effective basketball on both ends of the floor. And as we go through this video, you're going to understand why they're so effective in their game. First off, let's look at the high posts of Alperen Sengun as well as his pick and roll with people like Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green. Alperen Sengun has been phenomenal, especially out of the high post, right? His actions are creating a ton of great looks for teammates, showing his unique ability as both a scorer and a playmaker. With averages of 17.5 points, 11 rebounds, and nearly 5 assists per game, Sengun has taken a major leap this season, including much improved paint protection on the defensive end, and that's really what I want to focus on with his improvement, because over the course of his career, he really hasn't been known as too much of a defensive player. Right now, he's forcing really tough shots for opposing players, and this is really helping out their defensive rating, which we'll get into later in the video. On top of the high post actions we're also seeing him in the low post, and a lot of P&R as well, which is looking really well for Fred VanVleet, who's making pretty solid decisions, in my opinion, out of these looks, right? If they continue to get to the high post actions, pick and rolls, as well as some low post actions, they're going to continue their offensive successes. Next up, let's look at their domination of the offensive boards, which is honestly something that I think is being underlooked right now. One of the early successes for the Rockets in this early NBA season is their ability to crash the glass, not just offensively but also defensively. Looking at the offensive side of the court though, they are currently at a 30.7% offensive rebound percentage. Right now in defensive rebounding, they are currently 9th in the entire NBA. And I mean, this hustle on the boards not only creates second chance opportunities for them, but it's also limiting second chance opportunities for the other team, which means that they're going to be winning that second chance point battle most games, right? And really why this is happening is because of the Terror twins Amen Thompson and Tari Eason. They have been electric off the bench, which is why they have this nickname now, which I think is amazing. But I mean, their energy, defense, and ability to impact the games on both ends have made them untouchable in trade discussions. As we've seen, the Rockets are currently looking at trying to get someone like Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they just announced that Amen and Tari are two of their untouchables. I mean, Amen Thompson's putting up 11.3 points, 6.7 rebounds per game with an efficient 56% shooting, while Eason is contributing 11.7 points and 6.2 boards on 52.9% shooting. Their potential to be in the lineup during close games is definitely something to monitor, in my opinion, because I think that they could be very helpful on that side of the court. But looking into the future for the season, I think that these two guys are some of the best players that the Rockets have, and definitely probably the most valuable pieces on their bench. All right, next up, let's look at the defensive excellence and their pace on top of that. And right now, I really want to focus on Ime Udoka's influence that we kind of hinted at in the intro. A big reason for the Rockets' success is their culture shift brought on by head coach Ime Udoka. Obviously, last year he was brought on as the new head coach, but I think this year he's really been upping his game, right? His defensive first mentality has transformed the team into one of the toughest defensives to score against. Right now, they're actually second in defense effective field goal percentage at 49.9%, showing how disciplined they are in contesting shots and sticking to rotations. And on top of that, this is what's leading them to being such a great pace team. On top of, Amen Thompson and Tari Eason, they're currently 10th in pace at 99.5, which means that they're currently getting around 99.5 total offensive possessions per 48 minutes. And this really doesn't just show that they're a great defensive team, but that they're willing to push the tempo and catch opponents off guard, which is really good for them if you have an athletic finisher like Jalen Green, who's really, really good in the fast break, obviously, as well as Amen Thompson. And I think that this mix of defensive grit and fast-paced offense is willing to be a winning formula, and I think that these things just coincide perfectly together. All right, and now we've already looked at the Terror Twins, but I want to look more in depth on some of these key players, starting off with Jalen Green, right? Obviously, he's been scoring the ball pretty well at 19.7 points per game, but there's obviously some, resistance here with his shooting efficiency. Right now, he's at 39.3% from the field and 32.8% from three. There's definitely a big room for improvement, and we've really seen this since his rookie year, and I think that if he can become a more efficient player, he'd be so much better. And I think that if that is something that could happen, then they really don't need to trade for an offensive force, because then Jalen Green could slide in that role perfectly, right? I mean, some of the shots we're seeing Jalen Green take are not great shots at all. I think that he could definitely clean some of those up, but I mean, I think he's also missing a couple of wide open three looks, and honestly, I just think that if he could improve these percentages, his scoring numbers will go up. On top of that, the Rockets Rockets' overall efficiency on the offensive side of the floor would go up as well. Next up, let's look at the veteran guard they signed last offseason with Fred VanVleet. He has been a stabilizing force at point guard, averaging 15.6 points and 6.1 assists per game, while his shooting percentages are also a bit low at 40.1% from the field and 31.1% from three. His veteran presence and his leadership are really super important for this young roster, and I think really this is why they paid him so much money in free agency, right? I think a lot of people were definitely questioning if Fred VanVleet got overpaid. Right now, I also think that this is still a solid deal, right? You're getting a lot of leadership from Fred, and I think that's just really important for this young roster. And as a Rockets fan, Dillon Brooks, in my opinion, has really been going under the radar. Right now, he's averaging 12.1 points per game on 41.4% shooting, but really his shooting percentages from three on 39.5% is something that I think is really big, right? Like we've, kind of hinted at, the Rockets right now are actually 27th in three-point percentage across the entire association, and I believe they're 26 in total three-pointers made, which in a league right now that is currently favoring, teams making three-pointers and shooting three-pointers, this is something that they're going to need to improve on. Last night against the Bucks, we really saw this, right, where they lost by 1 point, and I mean, I think that this is something that they're going to need to improve going into the future. But looking back at Dillon Brooks, I just think that he's been such a big component because the Rockets don't have really any quote-unquote shooters, and I think that right now Dillon Brooks is kind of trying to fill that role. I think that once the trade deadline rolls around, we could definitely see the Rockets make a move, and I think that that would be really important for their shooting ability. Next up, let's look at Jabari Smith Jr., someone who's definitely showing a lot of potential. Also pretty efficient right now, 41.5% from the field with 29.4% from three. But I mean, he's really been raising questions in his late game situations, right? I think that he can definitely improve on this side of the court. Like we said before, Amen Thompson and Tari Eason are people that I could potentially see get an opportunity in late game scenarios like we saw with the Bucks. And I mean, I think that we could see more and more of these guys coming for Jabari Smith's role. But I mean, going forward, I think that Jabari Smith is definitely someone who's going to continue to be a streaky player. Like we saw with the Clippers, he almost had like 30 points. He made a ton of threes, and I think that's something that's going to continue to happen. Something I do think he needs to improve on is his arc on a shot. It's really flat, and I think that's why he's missing a lot of threes. But overall, I think that Jabari Smith really does have to step it up if he wants to continue to be on this Rockets team overall and just continue to have a positive influence. All right, and let's look at some of the areas of improvement for the Houston Rockets. And really what I've been hinting at this whole video is three-point shooting and the lack of a true offensive force, right? Looking at right now, the Rockets don't have an offensive star like Jason Tatum or Luka Doncic, and this is why I'm hesitant to put them in that contender tier. Even though I'm a diehard Rockets fan, really they just don't have that dude that can get a bucket, right? And I think that this is something that they're going to need to look to get maybe in a trade, right? I think that that'd be big for them considering how young their team is as well. I think if they could get some leadership with someone like Giannis Antetokounmpo, that would be amazing. But on top of that, their three-point shooting woes, like we talked about before, 11.6 three-pointers made per game is no bueno, right? 27th in effective field goal percentage at 50.4%. And I mean, like we said before, they don't have any pure shooters. Their most consistent shooters right now are actually Dillon Brooks and Tari Eason, in my opinion. And I mean, those guys are known for defense, right? They're not known for shooting. So if they can get Reed Shepherd some minutes, I think that'd be great. I mean, I think that it's tough for Ime with how good this roster is. But if he can improve on that side of the court, I think that this offense will be able to flow so much better, right? And I think that there's so much room for improvement in their three-point shooting. All right, now that we're done with all the analysis here, let's look at the big picture potential, right? At 10-5, sitting third in the West, the Rockets are no longer really rebuilding, in my opinion. I think that they're getting into the playoff contention tier, kind of like where they were last year, where they were 11th and they didn't make the play-in, even though they were 41-41. I think that this year they're definitely a play-in team. My main question for them is if they can make the playoffs, be a top 6 seed, which definitely could happen, right? And I think that if they continue to grow their young talent, that's going to be something that's very important for them as, the years go on. I think that if they can continue to, find their offense, that's going to be great. And really the biggest thing here, right, is if they can get someone like Giannis Antetokounmpo, that would be amazing. I think that that would immediately leap them into contender conversation if that were to happen today. But until then, they're going to continue to need to improve their young players. They're going to continue to need to play through together as a team. And I mean, as long as they keep this defense going, I mean, there's no reason why they shouldn't be a playoff team come playoff time. All right, y'all, that's the end of this video. If you guys liked it, make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe, and comment below. What do you think the Rockets need to do to stay in the upper echelon of the Western Conference? Let me know. I mean, I think if they continue to keep this defense going and potentially get another shooter, that's going to be great for them. But until next time, I'll see you guys next week.